Hi, and welcome to a really exciting webinar that we have for you all from Makematic about teaching online masterclass. I'm really excited to share and introduce to you two amazing women, Beatrice Lieveld and Sarah Walsh from Makematic. They're here today to share with you a wonderful new series that they've created, just released. This has just been available on our platforms over the past few weeks. We've added it, and I think it has so many amazing and timely tips, strategies, skills, and even things for us just to consider as we are moving to more online classes. So they have a lot of really great information, and I'll let them get to it. So I'll be in the question and answer section as well as the chat. If you have any questions along the way, I'll be there to answer any ones I can or queue them up for our hosts to answer at the end. So with that being said, Beatrice and Tara, take it away.
Thank you very much, Anne, and welcome everyone. Just a little brief intro. So my name is Beatrice, working for Makematic. I'm coming from London, UK to you, and today Tara is in Belfast in Northern Ireland. I would give you just a brief little intro on Makematic. We're an educational video company. You might have seen some of our content on the Infobase platform. Some of our content is directed to the teachers, which is professional development content, which we'll be talking to you about today. And also we create great content directed at students themselves. So a lot of the content we create with fabulous partners, like for instance, Adobe, Crayola, and iCivics, just to name a few. And also a lot of our content is based around 21st century goals, critical thinking skills, communication, coding, creativity, which is really kind of like a little bit of our niche. And before we start talk about Tom, I must also mention we've got some fabulous new content about American history and civics, which is called our Untold series, and I'm sure we'll be doing another webinar about that. So that is probably enough about Makematic, because I really just want to get going about our teaching online masterclass. So just a brief outline of where we're going to discuss today is, there you go, is our nice little Tom logo. So I want to discuss with Tara for you all, what is Tom, our teaching online masterclass, what is actually the content, what are the resources, and then of course we'll open the floor up to you because we want to answer your questions as well. Before we go into that, we'd love to start off with a little poll. Are we ready for the poll, or should we? Let me just see. So the poll is, there you go. There you have the poll is, how would you rate your overall ability to online teaching? And there you can select whether you're not proficient at all, whether you think you're below average, whether you are somewhat proficient, above average, or highly proficient. And if you can all just select, that would be great, because I know Tara, who is our Director of Engagement and Innovation, she has been doing some great research with all your fellow teachers and educators, and she will know the results because she's done this with a lot of European and Australian teachers. So it'll be interesting to see whether the results from the American educators are in line with the rest. So I think, is that probably enough time now for the poll, or should we wait for a bit longer?
We have results so far, Beatrice. Share them with you. About 50% are saying they're, somewhat, so kind of right in the middle. We have about 20% that are saying I'm not proficient at all, and then about 30% have come in saying they're above average. So.
Great, interesting. Right, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Tara, who is our Director of Engagement and Innovation. And she is also really the person who came up with the idea behind the Teaching Online Masterclass. So Tara, do you want to, just before we discuss those poll results, do you just want to discuss what made you think of Tom, and how how did you come about with the idea?
Yes. So hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So just to give you some context, I used to be a teacher many moons ago, actually not that long ago, a secondary teacher for many years, and an administrator. And when COVID hit, when was it, March, and we all went into lockdown, I had a lot of empathy for my fellow teachers, because I knew that a lot of educators would be struggling. There's a lot of reasons why they would struggle. Particularly, going online is not something that we're taught when we go into teacher college. We're taught to teach face to face. And as you well know, some schools are better equipped with technology than others. I'm lucky in that I have taught in schools that are very tech savvy, and a lot of high access for students, but that's a very unusual situation. And so one of the things that was coming out at the beginning of COVID was a lot of very experienced teachers, as well as new teachers as well, were all feeling very uneasy, very uncomfortable. It was very, very difficult for a number of reasons, right? And a lot of it was about not feeling proficient or feeling like you were back in your first year of teaching, which I'm sure you all remember, for those of you who've been teaching for a while or who are just new to teaching, it's a big year, right? And to actually be quite experienced and then to have to go backwards or feel like you're going backwards was very difficult for a lot of educators. So yeah. And obviously there was a lot of research done at the time, and teachers were saying a lot of what you're saying now, but less so. The statistics were definitely lower. People are feeling more confident 6 months on. So we decided as a company that we would create Teaching Online Masterclass. And what this is, essentially, it's about 50 odd videos, short form videos, right? About 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes is the longest, but they're mostly a lot shorter than that. And they're dipping in and out of different things to help you be a better facilitator or educator in the online teaching space. Now, the videos also have a bit of a focus on blended teaching as well, because they're interchangeable. A lot of the skills that you would use as an online educator are very similar to blended and even flipped classrooms. And so to address what we knew was a problem, we have created this series. And the series, and this is what Beatrice has heard me say this so many times, it drives I know it's driving her crazy. As an educator, there's nothing more irritating when someone who's never been in the classroom is telling you how you should teach. Whilst there is a place for that, I don't deny it's a bit irritating. And so one of the things about Tom is that 95% of the contributors who are providing their expertise are educators. They've either been in the classroom or they're in the classroom at the moment. We do have a neuroscientists and a clinical psychologist in there as well, simply because, they know their stuff too, and they certainly add value to the content. But this is a series for teachers, but it's created by teachers. And that's what we created. And, we can talk a bit more about that now. I'll be quiet.
Great. No, I just wanted to obviously we want to show you a little promo video so you have a little taster, but do we just want to go back and discuss the poll and how it went into your previous research, because I know obviously we've done the poll just now here, but you've done this poll with other teachers before as part of your research.
Yes, so over the last 6 months, as well as creating Tom, I've been working with Queen's University here in Belfast to conduct some research with educators. 6 months on, how are they all feeling? And we researched around about 95 educators in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, and obviously the UK as well. And it's interesting because we did the survey in around September, and we had that 90% of those teachers were experienced in online teaching, which 6 months previous, when there'd been other research that had been done, that statistic was like 20% or lower. Okay, so that's a big change. But in that time, what was interesting was that 57% felt they were proficient. Now, whilst 90% have done it, 50% proficiency, which is kind of similar to what we're hearing here, proficient or highly proficient, okay? But 57% is quite low, right? But it's still pretty high considering the leap. Like, that's a pretty big jump considering that before that time, that would have been a lot lower. Nevertheless, it does mean that there is still a need and a desire for more professional development in online teaching. And we know that this situation that we have in the world means that we're going to be continually going in and out of this kind of environment. But what's really interesting is that anything that you learn with teaching online, you can also apply to blended classes and flipped classes, which is probably more likely going to be the norm.
It's here to stay.
Exactly, more than online. Online's kind of where we don't really want to be, but we are. But the same skills are sort of fitting. So what the kind of results that we just got from that poll are quite similar. And there's another poll later that I can't wait to see what you guys are going to say, because it's always good to do a comparison. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that you're very on trend with what everyone, not that you need to be on trend, but it's very consistent with what we're finding. And look, 100's not a very big sample, but it's big enough, right, for us to get a good sense of what.
Okay, I think we should show people just a little promo so they get a better idea of the kind of videos that are part of the masterclass. And we have got a little promo, and then we've got another little video later on as well.
Oops, let's see if it works. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Tom Teaching Online Masterclass, a free video course designed to help educators adapt quickly to online teaching. There are a few practical strategies. Tom features over 50 bite-sized video modules designed to help you make the leap from face-to-face.
Students take with greater care
to online teaching and learning,
to collaborate and to build ideas,
focusing on pedagogy over technology,
the wonderful learning environment
with expert instruction from educators,
practicing
and academia.
Keep them unitasking to keep them learning.
Let Tom be your guide to online teaching.
Great. So that is obviously just a little taster for you. We'll watch another video later on, and you can watch all of the Tom videos on your Infobase platform. So you just don't have to go anywhere else. You can just go to find your video where you usually find it. Tara, obviously there's 50 videos, which is quite a lot. You mentioned they're bite size, but how can teachers really use this masterclass?
Yeah, 50 does seem like a lot, and you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, how on earth will I manage this? So what we've done is we've divided the content into 5 different themes. One of the things to bear in mind with this is there's a lot of professional development in online learning that focuses on technology. This focus for this content is on pedagogy, and we've been very deliberate in that. And the reason we've chosen pedagogy over technology is that technology is a tool, and we have that tool, but we're finding a lot when we talk to educators, and certainly, you know, from my own experience, is that whilst, you know, technology is important and it is the vehicle with which you deliver your classes potentially, or to communicate with your students, it's the pedagogy that's going to matter in the end. And so that's what the focus for this is. And so when we were designing this course, you know, my background, obviously I've worked in secondary education, but when I moved to the UK, I did move into learning and development and to the corporate world, and sort of more in relation to that kind of area. And one of the things that I do know is that a lot of the research and evidence that we find about best practice in online teaching is in higher education and in learning and development. And so what I did is we worked with, I mean, obviously I designed the course, but then we worked with different experts in different parts of, with our partners. And we decided to look at sort of 5 areas, to break it down into sort of 5 areas of real need at the time. So one is about how to design your online learning experiences. What does it take and what are the tools that you use in order to design your classes or your curriculum so that you can have inclusive classes. The second one is about pedagogical strategy. So there's a lot of videos, short videos that look at some, so things like online facilitation, how to facilitate a live class, how to adapt some of the pedagogical strategies that you use already to this online environment. So that's probably the biggest section. The next section was how to use technology as a tool. You know, the focus is on pedagogy, but obviously the technology element is obviously important too. But, you know, how do you use the basic tools that you have without getting too fancy? You can get fancy, and absolutely when we're talking to educators, amazing people doing amazing things, but you don't need to have fancy tools to make online learning a success, and that's where the focus of this one was. We looked at the whole idea of community building. One of the things that research tells us very clearly about success in online teaching and learning is how educators develop their own communities through professional learning networks. And so, you know, we had some of the partners, one of the partners that we've worked with, and we'll talk about them in a minute, is very much in that space, and that's where that came from. And finally, digital well-being. You know, we're all on using a lot more tech than we're used to, or most of us, including the students. And so these videos are kind of sort of addressing that. And so, you know, these are the kind of areas, and I'll talk more about some resources that we have made available to Infobase to help you navigate all of these videos, because it seems a little bit much, but actually when you understand how it's broken down and then how you can then find stuff, it's not too bad.
Definitely. I hope that all kind of makes sense. I think especially, for instance, the digital well-being thing is already just useful even for me, and I'm not a teacher and I don't have a teaching background, but it's just useful. It's just very useful general stuff. So let's have a quick look at the partners, just so you know that we have actually developed this with some names that you might have heard of, because I obviously appreciate Makematic is perhaps not so well known. So there's Participate, Adobe, iCivics, and ClickView is our Australian partner that takes a lot of our content as well, and so they are very well known, and we have obviously tapped into their resources and also their educators, which is great. So we're going to talk about all the additional resources and activities. Tara, was there something?
Before we do that, actually, sorry, one of the things as well with this content is you're going to hear a lot of different accents. For me, one of the most important parts of this is, one, I wanted mostly educators in this, and mostly women. You'll find more female contributors than there are men. Why? There are more female teachers. That's the reality. So we wanted to make that a bit more representative. We obviously tried to keep it as diverse as possible. But the other thing is not just diverse, we also wanted a range of accents. You know, we've got New Zealand, Australian, sorry, I'm in it. So guys, if you don't like my accent, just skip my video. You've got, you know, North Americans, we have British and Irish. Obviously would have loved a bit more than that and tried, you know, other countries.
I mean,
but
they could have had Dutch, but they obviously didn't want that. But
like someone who I would have loved that. But you know, we'll share with you some more. That might happen if we ever make another one, which we
definitely. So before we talk about the resources, which is all practical activity things as well, and more information for you to read, we wanted to just do another poll. So Anne, if you could please cue the poll, that would be great. Oh, here we go. It's nice when technology works. So the poll is, what type of professional development are you looking for to help you teach in online or blended teaching environments? So we'd love for you to select one of the following, whether you are choosing pedagogical focus PD for online and blended teaching, subject specific focus PD for online and blended teaching, year level focused PD for online and blended teaching, or technology focused PD, or perhaps something else, which is really interesting. Either way, we would like to hear from you. And again, Tara has used this question before, so we can go and tell and share with you once we have some results what the overall results were from Tara's previous research in this. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to click perhaps, because if we do, then we can go and look at another little video preview, but perhaps we should link them first to the poll result. So, Anne, do we have any results yet? Yeah.
We do. 75% have voted, with technology-focused PD being definitely the most selected results. Almost 70% of the attendees have selected that. And then the other two are tied, and those were the pedagogical-focused PD for online and blended teaching, and subject-specific focused PD for online and blended teaching. So those were the three that were selected.
Interesting.
That's really because it's quite contrary to the results that we had for our other survey.
Yeah.
The survey that we did, that I spoke about before, 66% of the respondents wanted pedagogical or subject-focused online how to teach strategies in online learning environments, and technology was basically not that important to those particular respondents. So I think that's really quite fascinating and really, really interesting to hear that, and love hearing things that are contradictory to stuff that we've done, because I just think it goes to show that, you know, we're all at a different stage of where we're at with this stuff, and that definitely there is there's especially
Absolutely.
a desire.
Absolutely.
That's very interesting to me. I love it when things contradict.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we have a video to show you, which is one of the Tom videos, and it's actually on the pedagogical strategies. So perhaps it can convince you to look at some more of these videos. Here we go.
Here are 3 things about behavior you need to know for blended and online learning. Now, thing number 1 is this: we cannot multitask. No human being can. It's not a skill issue, it's a hardware issue in the brain. And unfortunately, when we try and multitask, do multiple things at once, we tend to do everything slower, our accuracy drops significantly, and our memory and learning tank. So when we multitask, it's the single worst thing we can do for our learning. Now, why does this matter? Because online, most programs beg students to multitask. We just have to consider, okay, if the tool wants them to multitask, how do we develop techniques, programs, or systems that make sure they're focused on one thing at a time and only performing one job at a time? Keep them unitasking to keep them learning. Now, the next thing I want to teach you is that engagement isn't synonymous with learning. So think about it. There have been films that I've been wildly engaged with. I'm thinking like Thor and all those Marvel films that I couldn't tell you anything about today. And then other films that I've kind of in and out with, but because I went through proper learning, I talked about them, I debated the issues with my friends, with my family. That learning means I remember a ton about them. So the engagement didn't drive my learning, my actions did. So when we use online learning, it's not enough just to get kids doing stuff. We've got to make sure that that stuff they're doing is leading to deep, sustainable learning. So this means the actions, the behavior have to drive the learning forward. They can't just be fun work. So engagement is good, but we have to make sure that engagement is driving the learning. And the last thing I want to teach you concerns Google. So a lot of people think because we have access to information by Google, we don't need to think deeply or remember facts, we can just access them. Unfortunately, the way human cognition and behavior works is if we do not have facts embedded within us, in our long-term memory, we cannot apply our skills to them. We can't be creative with them. We can't critically think about them. We can't even really comprehend half of them. So even though a lot of kids will use online and digital to say, oh, I'm just going to look ideas up and then go use them somehow, that's not enough. Until you embed that information, there's really not a lot you can do with them. So when we're online, it's not enough to just get kids accessing information. We have to have tools, techniques to get them to deeply remember and embody them. Once it's in our long-term memory, then we can start going into deep learning with that information.
Well, I don't know about you, but I found that really interesting. And I've seen the video several times. Presenter. He is very engaging, I think the word is. So as we mentioned a couple of times, Tara has created several resources to go with Tom. So Tara, can you tell us a bit more about what you will have and how educators can use it?
So we've created a number of resources, and a lot of them are linked in the resources section of the webinar, and also I'm sure they're made available in other parts of the Infobase website. But the first thing to talk about that I've got is basically a booklet to help you understand Tom. So what you've got in there is you've got some basic information that we've gone through today about the different categories and the different themes the videos are in. You've got a full inventory of all the videos. Learn a little bit about the contributors, because I think that's important. We haven't just chosen contributors because we know them. It's not necessarily the case that we knew them before we created Tom. These contributors that we popped in this series were very specifically chosen because of their experiences in online and blended learning environments. We also have a lot of infographics that we've created from the content that the contributors shared, their expertise, and one of the ones was from our director of production here and how to create a structured video. So we have that as well. I'll talk about the white paper in a minute, but they're sort of the two sort of things that will help sort of embed some of the stuff that's in the content, in the videos really easily in your mind. I mean, so far to date, these videos have been watched by in the first 2 weeks that we released this content, over 2,000 teachers watched pretty much a big chunk of them each. And the great thing about the content is you can dip in and out as you want or as you need, because not all of the videos will be relevant to you, right? So, well, they might be, that would be cool. But if they weren't, you can dip in and out to what works for you. So that's the kind of additional content we have. We do have a white paper that I'll talk about in a minute. The other thing that we have created, and we're doing this, and this is sort of more on our social media, but also on our blog, is we interview educators around the world about their experiences with teaching online, and the interviews are super practical. So we're basically asking the educators to tell us a bit about themselves and what they're teaching. But more than that, what's working and what didn't work. And really it's about getting practical strategies. Eduardo, I interviewed last couple of weeks ago, and he talked a lot about language teaching. I've got an interview that I'm releasing soon from a physical education teacher. So the key of this is just getting different teachers in different disciplines to share their strategies and ideas. And we also have a blog that we do. So if anyone's interested in being involved in that, please, there's an email address at the end. I'd be more than love to hear from you, either in a blog form or a short interview. And we've found from the feedback from our community that these are really useful, and they sort of bridge on some of the themes that we talk about in Tom. And we're, educators around the world. Eduardo's in Mexico, Kylene's in Australia, Heather, who's been in it as well, is the UK, and we've got others coming up from different parts of Europe and things like that. Someone in Hong Kong soon too, which is exciting. And finally, we have I mentioned before that I've been working with Queen's University to create a white paper. So what this is, it's really just looking at some of the research and evidence around online learning. What does the research tell us? that works, and how can you apply it now? So there's a bit of the academic research in there, but more importantly, there's the practical strategies on how you can apply that knowledge to your online classes straight away. And there's lots of links to content that's on Infobase, as well as sort of ideas and that you would be very familiar with. So that I would really recommend for those of you who are interested in sort of taking your online teaching to a different level. It would hopefully be useful for you. And finally, from this part, in 2021, we are creating a series 2, which is super exciting. And basically what we're doing is we're using a lot of the learnings from the white paper, and we're going to put that into video form. And that's really exciting. We'll have contributors from all parts of the globe in this, and actually, it's evidence-based approaches to being a really top-notch online educator. So that's coming soon, and that will be available on Infobase probably more mid-2021, to be honest, once we get that all up and running. And finally, as I mentioned before, if you'd like to be involved in teaching online, taking classes online, the interview or blog series, or you'd just like to provide some feedback on the content or collaborate with us, please send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. This content is for you. It's not for anyone else, and it has to be what you guys want. We are looking for contributors as well who would like to share their experiences in different ways. So please reach out and send me an email, and let's set up a Zoom meeting and have a bit of a chin wag. And yeah, I think that's us. Thank you. And I guess if there's any questions, we'd love to throw it over to you. Do you have questions for Beatrice and I? Hopefully you could understand my Australian accent. I wasn't speaking too many Australians speak Australian, and obviously that's a different language from not English, right? So if that was a problem, you need to let us know. But yeah, so please, any questions, pass you over to Anne, because I think she's got a camera on. And thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you'll use the content, and we'd love to.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Oh my gosh, so many great messages, and I personally can say I'm thankful to hear that message. I've watched so many of these clips, but I didn't catch the one about multitasking. And I can say, and just forgive me here, but as a woman, that was so important for me to hear, because sometimes there's the joke of like, oh, women can multitask, and I'm always like, oh, it's such a struggle. And as in an online world, especially for teachers too, when we're doing so many things, and as a reminder with our students and the world we live in where everything is firing, and that hit home for me. And I was like, I'm gonna make a note and put that up above my desk to keep that focus. So thank you for sharing that, as well as the other information. As Tara and Beatrice have shared, there's so many of these great videos on our platforms to support you as an educator, and so many of the topics, there's just shy of, I think, there's 53 or just shy of 60. And I mean, some of the topics are ones where you might find yourself saying, that actually is a really important topic. How do I connect? How do I build a relationship online with my students? How do I have that camaraderie that we maybe could have had in an in-person classroom where they, and so that, along with so many other, pedagogical tips and things like that, it's such a fantastic series. And I really do feel like it can support you as an educator. So I hope you check them out. So there's some really great questions that I want to be able to share with you. The first one comes from Kate, and she asks the question. This is kind of going back to that strategy about incorporating an activity every 5 minutes. So she asks, does the formula saying to incorporate an activity every 5 minutes hold true for K-12 learners in addition to adult learners? So kind of asking from the adult learner point of view. Do you guys have any feedback for her on that?
Adults have, people say we have a reduced attention span. That's actually not true. We're more distracted now. We have more to distract us. Adults, you can wait a bit longer with adults. In fact, from my experience, when I've taught online with adults, I used to change things every 10 minutes. So, I think with adults, you can Is that have I understood the question correctly? That was the question, right?
Activity, yeah.
So with adults, you can totally do it a bit longer. And I also think once you know your students anyway, you'll be able to measure that. But yeah, totally 5 minutes. Don't stress yourself. You can definitely do it longer. In fact, you could even go up to 15, depending on what your group is like. If they're really difficult, maybe every 5 minutes is the way to go anyway. But totally, I think with an adult audience, and from my experience, you could totally stretch that out a bit more and take it easy on yourself a bit more. Yeah. And with kids too, like with students, young people, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes either, right? Depends on the year level. Older kids anyway, you can let it stretch out a bit more, and then but yeah, 5 minutes is just something to keep in the back of your mind. Answered that, not rambling too much.
No, that's awesome. And Tara, would you agree that so much of this is for teachers that are joining us or educators, and honestly, I do feel like some of these tips are just useful for us as we move online, even if it's as a company with a meeting, or you're having a faculty meeting, like you just want to stay engaged. And we've all taught a class or given a presentation, and you can tell the people that are engaged with you and that maybe the ones that's not connecting with them. And I hope you don't mind, Tara, even before this, we even were talking about ourselves, like joining webinars and things like that, and how we pick up on what is important to us. What are the tips that we need, or that connect with what we're looking to get out of it? So sometimes I always, and having gone through so many of these professional development sessions, especially this year with producers and creators like yourself, the biggest message I feel like is engagement, and how do we make that engagement happen? And so you as the educator, when you're connecting with your students rather in a classroom, and so how to build and set yourself up for that success online. And Tara, maybe I'd be curious too, like sometimes planning that lesson to give yourself those opportunities to kind of have in the your back pocket, so as you feel like the energy is waning, or maybe you're not seeing the chat come in, to kind of pop that up. Maybe you could think about yourself in this session, when we pop those polls up on the screen, did it maybe kind of make you feel more engaged even in this workshop? And so I think some of your suggestions from your series that you put forth, this Tom series, I found myself thinking, I hope teachers will have these kind of as those tips when they need them, right? Sometimes building this all out with all of these interactive components is a big ask, but making sure you have them so when you need them, they're available. So, so I just love this series. So I'm going to go on and on about how great it is now.
Actually, I just want to add to that is that just have a laugh. You're never going to get this right. It's hard work. But the one thing I would say to planning, you do need to plan more online. And you guys all know this. I'm sure you've been teaching online. The reality is it's more time consuming at the beginning. But the older your students are, you can give them more agency and you can let them go a bit. Obviously with younger students, that is unfortunately not always that easy. But just to sort of brush on that point, the planning is planning is important in face-to-face, but I used to wing it sometimes, and let's be honest, we all do, right? But you can't really do that as easily online. So sorry, I just had to just add that because it's important, I think.
No, it's great.
And these
it's so good. Beatrice, were you looking to add something? Maybe not. There was another comment that came in, and I know I've read this book and loved it. Teaching Digital Natives. A suggestion came in from Marina for if you're looking for some books to read. Teaching Digital Natives, Partnering for Real Learning by Mark Prensky. And what's great about that, and I can say, I'm sure you probably read, some of the things are, meeting students where they are, right? So, for so long we've talked about digital natives and digital immigrants, but our students, this is the world that they've lived in their whole life. Sometimes it's, I can say for me, it's still crazy when I'm like, wait, you were born after 2000. Somehow that's the cutoff in my mind. And so, it really shows how old And so to think like our, our students, they've lived in a world where this has all been just such a part of their life. And, as teachers, I know so many of us and you and our community have worked so hard to stay on top of technology, but it's awesome to be able to acknowledge from students that they know a lot too, and giving them that credibility to say, hey, this is a new software we're going to use. Let's learn it together. And even giving your student the opportunity to learn from your student is great. I know I had a teacher that was talking about, and it's a little controversial, but she was talking about that when, as a reward, she did like a TikTok dance or a TikTok, and her kids just so connected with that because it was such a part of the world they live in. And there's all these different apps and different things that they do, but another was like another dance and in any event, but meeting those kids and our students, in that world that they live in, it helps to build that relationship online, when you can't make it in person. So that book, Teaching Digital Natives, Partnering for Real Learning, it is, we're gonna put it in here and I'll send it to everyone, but if you're looking for it, it is a fantastic book.
Thank you for the recommendation. I have that.
Yeah, you'll love it. So those were our 2 questions. I think you guys just did such a thorough job covering things. So to follow up, there are a lot of great handouts I would encourage you to check out in the webinar menu rather. You'll see a handout section. If you click on the arrow to expand it, you'll see that Tara and Beatrice have provided so many great support materials. Tara, you mentioned this, but the one thing about Makematic resources you're going to find is that because they've been created by educators, you are never left hanging. They fully support that teacher and understand that teacher, and so the resources are just so thorough. So in there, you'll see, first of all, a handout of the slides that were shared in the webinar. You'll see the white paper, and then also 5 mindset competencies and how to be a facilitator. So those are available for download. And as we're doing that, actually another question came in. It says, do you offer exemplar lessons or template lesson plans? I don't think those are available, Tara, for the lessons because they're more of tips and strategies. But no, maybe I can let you.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have in the videos, they talk about the universal design for learning. Whilst it's not technically a downloadable template, it is a template for how to design your classes that are inclusive in online environments. And there's like a 3-step methodology that James talks about, and that is very easy to apply. So if you look at the universal design for learning, Christine and James both are the 2 contributors to that, and they will talk a lot about that. So I would recommend checking those out. That could be like a framework template. There's like 3 questions you can ask yourself for every planning of every lesson. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's a good start. And then from there, that could help you design that kind of inclusive online lesson, which is, it kind of elusive. It feels like it's elusive at times, but it's an awesome framework that you can use cross-curricular or just, within your specific classes as well. So I totally check those out.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And I made these notes in the section of Q&A, so you can check them out. You can download the handouts, but then please check out these in our services. So if you're an Infobase current subscriber, by going to Learn 360 or Films on Demand, Classroom Video on Demand, our subscription services, these resources are available and can be accessed 24/7. And if you have any questions, or if you want to take Tara up on her recommendation to offer some feedback and support as they design series 2, yeah, it'll be great. So I don't see any more questions coming in, ladies. So I'll just extend a massive thank you to you both. I really admire the work you do, and the time you took to join us today. So thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Anne, for setting it up.
Guys, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, please get in touch. I want to hear from you guys. We're always looking to hear from you, because that's what it's about. I don't want to hear about non-teachers at the moment for this course anyway. Definitely.
All right.
All right. So have a lovely day.
See ya. Take care. Bye.